So on this final section of chapter 6, all we're doing is solving the system, but by system of inequalities, but by graphing it. Okay? So let's review a little. I'm going to do the odd ones on this video. Whenever you have a letter equaling a number, it's going to be either a horizontal line or a vertical line. Now, when it's x equals a number, it's a vertical line. When it's y equals a number, it's a horizontal line. The only difference is they have inequalities here. So still, on the top equation, x is greater than -1. Let's pretend that it says like x equals -1. So you go to the x-axis, you go to -1, you put a dot right there, and then you draw a vertical line right through it. Now this is the shortcut of drawing it, okay? Now, the real explanation is if it did say, oh yeah, by the way, maybe I shouldn't draw a solid line yet because that would be incorrect. So let me go back to this. This is a vertical line going right through the x value of -1. But to get the full explanation, you'd have to do an xy table. And of course, for your x's, you're plugging in -1. For your y's, you could plug in whatever you want, 0, 1, 2, or like even negative numbers, whatever you want. So if you go to these coordinates, -1, 0 is right there, -1, 1 is right there, -1, 2 is right there. We know we have a vertical line. We already knew that whenever you have x and a number, it's going to be a vertical line. Now, because there is no solid line underneath it, that means that it's not going to be a solid line. You're just going to go dotted all the way up and all the way down. So you need to shade either one side of the line or the other side. Now, right here, it doesn't really, actually you could use the shortcut. What does it say here? What does it say? That says equals right here? No. It says greater. Now, in terms of y, yes, greater is up and less than is down. Or greater than is above and less than is below. But in terms of x, which way is greater? On the x number line, which way is greater? Is it this way? Or is it this way? To the right, right? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Numbers are getting greater as you go this way. So greater than would mean that you shade in this side of that dotted blue line. Okay, now we need to graph the other one on this exact graph. So it's kind of like ignoring the top one that you already graphed, and now let's graph the other one. If you have different colors, this is where it's great to use different colors. So on the other one, this one says y is less than or equal to -3. So when you have a letter and a number, you go to that axis, you go to that value. Let's go to -3. Let's put a dot right there at -3 on the y. And we're going to draw a horizontal line in this case, going left and right. And this one will be solid. It will be solid because it has a solid line underneath the inequality. That's why I drew it solid instead of dotted like this one. So what does this say? Less than or greater than? That's less than. So less than, is it above or is it below? It's below, so we're going to shade in below. And now here's the important part. The only thing that you really care about on this equation is representing the overlap piece. The overlap piece. So the overlap piece is right here. Check it out. This rectangle down here. So if you flip over your paper and look at the back side of it, you'll see that rectangle only, I believe, with the solid line up here, and on this wall of the rectangle, it's dotted. They don't really, I don't think they show any of this other stuff, do they? No. They just show the rectangle, because it's the overlap piece that matters, okay? So on your quiz, I don't care if you shade in all of this and all of this, but you need to really, really shade in the overlap piece, because that's the only thing that really matters. Now, let me explain what it means that this is the only part that matters. Any coordinate down here will work for the entire system. Any coordinate anywhere else, like up here in the blue, it'll only work for the top equation, but it will not work for the bottom equation. Any coordinate down here in red, it'll only work for the bottom equation, but it won't work for the top equation. If you want the coordinates that work for both, then it's this overlap piece. Anything down here is going to work. Like you could plug in the coordinate 10, negative 10. That'll be 10 on the x, negative 10. It's going to definitely be down here in this shaded area. So if you plugged in 10 for x, 10 is greater than negative 1. Yes, it works. Negative 10 for y. Negative 10 is less than or equal to negative 3. Yes, it works. So any point down here will work. Any point anywhere else will not work. And that's exactly why on the back side you only see this shaded rectangle right here. Skipping over to question 3. So yeah, it took a long time because I was explaining it. Let's do number 3 pretty quickly. The top equation, the top inequality I want to do in red. The top inequality crosses the y-axis where? It's already in slope-intercept form. The slope is 1 over 1 and the y-intercept is 3. So it crosses at 3. Let's all go to the y-axis and put a dot at 3. Now from that point, you're going to go up 1 over 1 because the slope is up 1 over 1. So you're going to go up 1 over 1 and put a dot right there. Up 1 over 1, dot right there. Backwards with that pattern, you could go all the way through this graph. Now, is the top equation that I'm doing in red, is it solid or is it dotted? It does not have a solid line underneath it, so it's not going to be a solid line. So let's now go to shading. I either need to shade in the bottom part of this dotted red line or the top part of this dotted red line. What does this coordinate say, or what does this inequality say? Greater than, which means what? Above or below? Above. Greater means above, so you're going to shade in the above part. So I would lightly, if you have a pencil, just lightly shade in the top part. Now, of course, you're supposed to test the point 0, 0. You plug in 0 for x, plug in 0 for y. You're going to see that it doesn't work. 0 is not greater than 3, right? So this does not work, so you shade in the other side. But the shortcut is to just look at the inequality. Greater means above, less than means below. So now let's go to the other one and graph this one in blue. Y is less than or equal to negative 1. You go to the y-axis, you go to negative 1, and you draw a line right through it, horizontally. Is it going to be a solid line or a dotted line? Solid. So let's do a solid line right below it, or right through it. And do I shade in above this blue line or below this blue line? Below. Why below? Because it says less than. So less than is below. So you're going to shade in below. Now, the only part that really matters is the overlap piece, which is, it's not here, it's not up here, it's not over here, it's down here. So this like little triangle right here, you need to really shade it in. I want to do it with a different color. You really shade in that triangle right there. And of course, on the top side, it's solid. On the bottom side of this triangle, it's dotted. And that's very important that you do a dotted, or that you could see that it's dotted on one side and solid on the other. Let's go to number 5. Now, number 5, they are in standard form, so you're going to have to manipulate them first, get them in slope-intercept form. So let's get rid of that x by subtracting x. So the top equation is really going to be y is less than or equal to negative x, which means negative 1 over 1x, minus 1. The bottom equation, you're going to also subtract x, and you're going to rewrite it. It's going to be y is greater than or equal to negative x, which means negative 1 over 1x, plus 3. So let's graph the top equation in red, negative 1. That's the b value, so put a dot at negative 1. From that point, you're going to go down 1 over 1. So you're going to go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. Use that pattern backwards to go all the way across your graph. Now, is the top equation going to be solid or dotted? Solid, because there's a solid line underneath the inequality. So you draw a solid line right through those dots. Let's go to the blue equation. The blue one crosses the y-axis where? 3. From that point, what do I do? You go down 1 over 1 also, down 1 over 1 also, down 1 over 1 also. Wait a minute, I totally forgot to shade on the red. Okay, so let me back up a bit. Let me erase this blue one. We're going to graph that later. Let's first shade on the red one. Let's go back to the red one. Am I shading above the red line or below the red line? Below. So I need to shade in everything below the red line, down here. So do it lightly with the pencil. Now let me graph the blue one. It crosses at 3. You go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. Use that pattern backwards. And now, is it solid or dotted? Solid. Do I shade in above the blue line or below the blue line? Above. How do I know it's above? Because it says greater than right there. So it's above. So you shade in everything up here. So you need to really shade in the overlap piece. Where's the overlap piece at? There is none. So what does that really mean with regards to this inequality system? If there is none. If there is none. No solution. No solution. No solution. Now technically, all of these answers to the systems of inequalities, they're all infinitely many solutions because it's a whole area, right? If you think about this, any coordinate over here within this triangle that gets extended this way is going to work. So there's an infinite amount of answers. But right here, there is no overlap, so there is no answer. On the back side, it says no solution, correct? On number 5? It doesn't? Okay, so it does show that there is no overlap piece. Oh yeah, they do have the symbol, right, of no solution. 0. So yeah, that means no solution. So they do write no solution. But the reason why there's no solution is because there is no overlap. Let's jump to number 7. Top one I'm going to do in red. Crosses the y-axis at 1. Here it is. From that point, what's my slope? On the top one. What's my slope of the top one? Up 1 over 1. Go backwards with that pattern. Is it a solid line or a dotted line? Dotted, because there is no solid line underneath the inequality. So I'm just going to leave it like that, dotted. Let me go and start shading. Am I going to shade above this dotted red line or below this dotted red line? Above, because it says greater than. So you can shade in above the dotted red line. So do a light shade with your pencil. And now let's graph the other line, which I'm going to do in blue this time. The other one crosses at 1 as well, but this time it goes down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. And you go with that pattern backwards to get all the way to the other side. Am I shading, or is this a solid line or a dotted line? Solid. Put a solid line between all those blue dots. Am I shading above the blue solid line or below? Above. Why above? Because it says greater than or equal to. So we're going above the blue line. So shade in lightly above. Now the question is, where's the overlap piece? It's this triangle right here. So you really shade in that part. Really shade it in. And of course, when you do this, you need to make sure that this side of the triangle is solid and this one over here is dotted. And you shade in all that. Let's go to number 9. Top one I'm going to do in red. Crosses at 4. What do I do from that point? Up 2 over 1. I'm off the graph, but that's okay. Let's go backwards. Over 1 this way, down 2. Over 1 this way, down 2. So we could keep going backwards with that pattern to go all the way across the graph. And the top equation is solid or dotted? This top one that we're doing in red. Solid or dotted? Dotted. So let's put a bunch of dots between the dots or some dashes. Do I shade above or below the red line? Below, because it's less than. So we're going to shade in below down here. So when you go below, you're going to be shading in. Do a light shade, of course. And now let's go to the other one and do this one in blue. This other one in blue crosses at 1. And from that point, you're going to go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And you're going to use that pattern backwards. Wow, this is going to be ugly. But that's okay. The bottom one will be solid, so the blue one is solid. And now we need to shade in either above the blue line or below the blue line. What do you say? Up above. So you're going to shade in all of this above. But again, the overlap piece is what matters. And the overlap is this right here, this triangle. This side's dotted, and it goes all the way down to here. And this one over here is solid. So you shade in that piece right there. Final one, right here it says write a system of inequalities. They give you the answer, you need to write the system of inequalities. So you need to take a look at one line at a time. And obviously the slope from here to here, the slope is up 1 over 1. So the m is 1. And the b value, it happens to cross at 0. So in y equals mx plus b form, this line is y equals 1x plus 0. Now, it's not an equal sign because it's not a solid line. So you would have to change it to above that line. So above would be greater than, not or equal to, just greater than. So y is greater than 1x. Y is greater than 1x. For the other equation, we're going to do that one in red. And it also crosses at 0. So the b value is also 0 for the red one. And you are going down 1 over 1. So the slope for that red one is down 1 over 1, which means that it's just negative 1. So it's going to be y equals negative 1x plus 0. So it's just going to be y equals negative x. But since we look at the shading part with regards to this red dotted line, the shading is clearly above the red dotted line, right? So this symbol right here has to be switched to greater than because it's above. So you're going to put a greater than symbol right there. So the red inequality will be y is greater than negative 1x, or just y is greater than negative x. And this is your inequality system, or system of inequalities that is represented with this problem. I will explain the even ones on a different video.